Salam Faya'd has served as Prime Minister in the Palestinian National Authority since June of 2007. Often referred to as the man the West prefers to deal with, Faya'd earned his doctorate in economics from the University of Texas. He served as an official with both the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. The Media Line's Felice Friedson sat with Prime Minister Faya'd in his Ramallah office and discussed Palestinian statehood, the humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip, relations with Israel, the return of Gilad Shalit, and other issues of the day.
Mr. Prime Minister, what is the most serious problem caused by the division of Gaza and the West Bank, in effect the creation of two Palestinian states?
You just mentioned one key dimension to the problem. It's political dimension. Political dimension associated with continued separation and apartness, which set in June of 2007, and since then became deeper, unfortunately. I think the biggest risk that entails, in my view, politically, and given our national aspirations, is that the entire Palestinian cause, after decades of struggle to get to the point of freedom, would be put firmly, unfortunately, on a path of liquidation, basically, because what has happened over the past year and a half and more now, unfortunately, is for there to be misery and for there to be extreme suffering to which our people in Gaza have been exposed. But in addition, while all of that was going on, the situation in the West Bank in terms of settlement activity, expansion, confiscation of land and what have you, activity totally inconsistent with the prospect of emergence of an independent, viable Palestinian state, of which the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, would form an integral component. That prospect diminished even more. That situation is not sustainable, clearly, from our point of view. That's one dimension to it. It's the political dimension, and it's hugely important. The other dimension, of course, relates to the practicality associated with managing. We are the Palestinian Authority. We are in charge of the welfare of Palestinian people residing both in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. And with the division in place, with it having become deeper, our task of providing for the welfare of our people in Gaza became very, very difficult over the past months, year and a half and more, as I said.
What is your assessment of the recent Israeli operation in Gaza? Was the failure to topple Hamas an opportunity that was missed?
Clearly, this is a situation that has brought nothing but disaster to us Palestinians. Certainly, first and foremost, in terms of the human suffering it entailed, massive loss of life, unprecedented, but also massive damage to infrastructure, possibility of livelihood in Gaza. Not that the situation was that great to begin with before the offensive, but of course that made it a lot deeper, a lot worse, and the misery index in Gaza has never been higher. So insofar as Hamas is concerned, Hamas is a faction with a program with which I do not agree, and people are, particularly the international community, is focused on the political platform of Hamas, but Hamas is not only about that political platform, it's about other components of the platform with which I disagree. To think that one is going to deal with a party with whose platform one does not agree by just doing away with that party is not thinking about things right. I mean, the mere fact that there is discord amongst factions and parties does not mean that those disagreements can and should be settled by recourse to weapons and arms and fighting it out. I mean, that is something that was damaging to us.
You've been saddled with this internal political problem between Fatah and Hamas for several years now. Your goal is a Palestinian state. You cannot have two contiguous states. So how, with these great challenges, do you move forward?
I think there are ways in which those differences can be, if not reconciled, there are ways in which these issues can be dealt with in a manner that would make it possible for us to govern ourselves while keeping to our obligations insofar as the peace process is concerned, and all of the obligations that we have entered into and the commitments we made. We remain firmly committed to all of the obligations that we have entered into. I believe the issue then should not be one of how to exclude a certain faction from being a political player, but how to manage in a manner that would make it possible for us to deal with all of those obligations and to deal with the international community, to interact with it, while at the same time being able to manage our own internal differences. There are several ways in which this can be done. It is conceivable, for example, one way of dealing with all of this is for the factions to agree to a government, to a non-factional government, what I would call a national consensus government. This is a way in which this can be handled.
Do you think Hamas could recognize Israel ultimately?
What is the ultimate goal or deliverable of the peace process is the emergence of an independent, viable Palestinian state on the territories occupied in the 1967 war, clearly living side by side in state and security and harmony with all of its neighbors, including Israel. And that's the goal of the peace process to which we committed ourselves. There is not really going to be a question of recognition. I mean, if this is really accepted as the outcome of the peace process to which we have committed ourselves and which we have been pursuing, then there should not be a question of recognition. But all I'm saying is that, unfortunately, given the situation we are in, choices we have to make oftentimes are more choices between bad and worse, not between good and bad. The case against doing it this way or that way, or that we cannot move, we have to stop everything until we resolve all these conflicts or differences. Therefore, rather than say stop everything, which therefore basically makes the process itself a hostage to an outcome which was produced democratically, I think what is best is to resort to a political process that leads out to resolving these differences over time, and in the interim, find practical solutions to those problems. But it would be a huge mistake to just basically stop everything until there is a different outcome.